Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Linda Mattioli from Origins Incubator, and I help physicians create and launch their dream practice. So, today we're going to talk about going from one to many, from patient number one to many, and how do we do that? We'll be talking about that in the context of reaching out into your community versus online outreach. And I'd love to tell you exactly how I did it. So, when I was first starting, I had a brick and mortar, so I did not have a virtual practice, but this works for whether you have virtual or brick and mortar. Is I started with community outreach, and I am a firm believer that you how to start getting patients is through reaching out into your community, and you extend to the online realm once you have a certain amount of patients, once you're basically full or full. And the reason for that is that people, when you get out there in your community and you're introducing yourself to providers for referrals, or you're providing a talk in the community, you instantly create that know, like, and love factor. And people are much more apt to move forward with your discovery call or foundational assessment, which that is the track that we teach. So on my calendar, two times, I made it a point that the first year, two times a month, I went out and I would introduce myself to not only primary care doctors, but also any sort of allied health provider, who we might share, this patient population, like patients who are interested in supporting their health in like an integrative lifestyle based approach. So I reached out to physical therapists, I reached out to primary care doctors, I reached out to acupuncturists, chiropractors, um, and speech therapists, mental health therapists, dentists. So the list goes on and on in terms of other people that are providing health services. So I want to start by talking about the primary care physician. So in my practice, I operate as an extension of the primary care team. I do that because I want to have my practice. I don't want to be on call 24/7. I don't want to be kind of triaging emergencies or acute issues. I want to be the person who they have had these IBS, these GI complaints for quite some time. They've already done the workup, so we've ruled out anything acute. We've ruled out anything that needs to be kind of pharmaceutically, surgically, medically intervened on. And the doctors basically tell them, listen, this is this constipation or this diarrhea or whatever we're dealing with, you can take this to control the symptom. So once we're there, that is kind of my ideal person. So when I introduce myself to primary care doctors, that's what I say. I say, that patient where you feel like you've done all that you know how to do for them, and I bring up things like IBS and migraines and insomnia, like some conditions that in conventional medicine their toolkit may not be that deep in. And I say, like, that's my ideal patient, refer them to me, because I take the time, I am able to have the time where we go through their lifestyle, we go through their nutrition, their nervous system, and things like that. And so I tell them, I'm not I don't compete with you. I'm not going to be taking your patients because I'm not doing pap smears. I'm not doing, any of those kind of like preventative annual things. And I said, and I don't, if they have a sore throat and they think they have strep, I'm telling them to go right back to you. Like, this isn't how I practice. So, creating a referral network is huge, because if that potential patient trusts this provider and this provider trusts you, then you automatically have like that direct referral. They're much more apt to call if their primary is like, hey, you need to call this person. Like I would get phone calls all the time, like, Dr. So-and-so told me to call you to help me with my migraines, that sort of thing. So creating a list of health providers that could refer to you. And in my course, I teach you kind of the verbiage to use, how to put something together to bring to them so they can refer back to it. I also highly recommend that you would offer them a foundational assessment, which is what I teach, is like that first initial deep dive appointment, either at a discount or even complimentary, so they really know what you do, and they can kind of discuss it more easily with the patient. That's number one, is referrals. Number two is going to be community outreach, community talks. When I see the physicians that I help not getting patients at the pace that they would have liked, they're spending way too much time online and not enough time getting their face out there just in their own neighborhoods. So the next step is just introducing yourself to other storefronts. So these are not like healthcare businesses. They might be, farm stands. They might be yoga practices. They might be juice places. Whatever it is, they're basically shops and stores and businesses that your client would potentially frequent. And you give a community talk on on a topic that you treat. So it might be gut health, it might be stress, it might be thyroid, it might be adrenals. I mean, whatever it is, that might be brain health. So whatever it is that a complaint that an ideal patient might have for you, that's what you're giving the talk on. What I recommend is kind of bookending the talk, where you're not just giving a bunch of information. Like, that is part of it. You want it to be very valuable, but you want to start by saying, listen, this is who I am. This is the story about how I came to do what I do, because most of us have our own health journey story, which is why we're in this work, either ourselves or somebody we love. And say, listen, tell them, put out there and tell them your intention. Like, this talk is going to provide a lot of value, and you're going to have actionable steps to do tomorrow. But if this aligns for you, and if you would like to work with me, in your folder, so in my course, I kind of tell you exactly what to put in this folder. You will have the opportunity to have an appointment with me or give me a call, and we can go from there. So let them know in the very beginning that, like, you're open for business. Like, you're ready to help them with the X, Y, and Z problem. Then you go through the talk, and then you invite them again to either do the discovery call or do the foundational assessment. You keep that path going. And at the end of the day, I probably introduced myself to tens and 20s of healthcare providers. At the end, I probably had 3 that regularly referred to me, and that's plenty. That was enough, And even with the community talks, I may have introduced myself to probably 20, 25 different stores, but we got into a cadence of these 2 different stores. We got a good response. We had a good rapport, and I just kept frequenting their places for my community talks over time. So nothing can replace that kind of effort. And then when it comes to, so then once you're full, so once that happens and you have your 100 patients or 150 patients, however, whatever you're shooting for, then you start really kind of, you can kind of scale back on your referrals and community talks if that's what you want. I like doing community talks, so I still did them because I thought that they provided a good service and a good education for people that may not have been able to afford my services. Then you start getting your effort into the social media and the online presence. So that would be, now you have these patients, now you have all these prospective patients that you did your talks with. So that whole time period that you were building this, you were collecting email addresses and you're having an email list. So now you might have like 800, 900 people on this list. And now is a good time to start engaging them in a newsletter, email content, video content, whatever you are most comfortable with, because then you have this base of patients that when you almost create like a wait list with, or you can market to with like supplement packages for like cold and flu season, or whatever. You can just say, hey guys, here's a special on blank. Here's some information on the immune system and beef up your immune system this cold season with this. And then you get like a bundle or something like that. So by doing that initial outreach, then you get this email list and then you can do that. A lot of physicians want to do like an online program. So when you grow at this organic slow rate, like those initial 20 patients or so, you're probably spending a lot more time with. You're spending a lot more time probably doing their plans and their notes because you're just kind of getting your feet wet and getting the hang of it. You're learning so much about what works and doesn't work. So when it comes to the online program, it's like you have all this data. Now you've worked with all these patients for a year or two as you're growing your practice. And now you're like, okay, like this can be automized. This piece really seemed to make a difference with my IBS patients, whatever. And then you're slowly kind of building your online program from there. So then once you kind of know what works and doesn't work, what moves the needle and doesn't move the needle for patients, then you can accurately create this online program. And again, you have that email list to market to. And then with that, so kind of going back to the newsletter, when you make that email content, newsletter content, that can be the content that you use for your social media and your posts and things like that. So it all starts to kind of like organically grow. And I think that sometimes back to us, like allowing ourselves to be a beginner, just allow yourself space and time to grow with those first few patients. Get out there, get your face out there, introduce yourself to the community, and um, a, it just grows so much faster once you start consistently. Like you have the goal of 2 community talks a month and 2 introductions per month. um, I promise you it'll grow a lot more efficiently than only working online with your marketing. And in our course, we really talk about, what how to do your business cards, your postcards, how to accurately discuss your foundational assessment, so storefronts can kind of have that information. But I think that it's really important. I think it's kind of a missed piece sometimes. But keep doing great, and please reach out with any questions that you might have. And have a wonderful day. Thanks.